Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another great review for you from the brand Zelos. Now, they were founded back in 2014, and they're a micro brand startup with this very unique overbuilt design aesthetic. Now, in terms of the type of watch, this particular watch would be categorized as a dive watch. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for a diver: you're going to want water resistance, typically through some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. Now, this particular model has actually, depending on when you watch this video, still has yet to be released. It is the Spearfish 40mm diver in the forged carbon color combination. Now, all this really is is really just a refined take on their popular Swordfish model. Some notable changes and upgrades is that it's powered by the Swiss Lajou Perret G100 movement. Also, the case and bracelet have been hardened to 1200 hardness vigors. Another cool piece is that this is actually available in either a 120 click unidirectional dive time bezel or a 60 click bidirectional 12-hour traveler's bezel. And this particular piece, upon the launch special, will be going for starting out at $649 or $699 as seen in this particular forged carbon layout. There's also a 740 meteorite dial, and then prices will increase by about $100 after the launch special ends around March 15th. These will be going live around February 15th. So with that said, yeah, I'm a big fan of Zelos. This is, I think they really overachieved. Ultimately, I've always kind of wanted a premium version of the Swordfish, and boy, did they ever deliver that with the Spearfish and then some. So with that said, let's zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so as you can see, very recognizable lines and angles, and just the general design aesthetic feels like a Zelos, and specifically it is very reminiscent of their Swordfish model, which I have a couple of examples here closely related. So first one would be the original 42mm size. This one is in titanium, but it also does have that forged carbon layout. As you can see, very similar aesthetics there. Main differences being the sandwich dial, of course, in terms of the looks. Overall more refined. You're getting the female end link instead of the male. Also, this is a 40mm versus a 42. But in terms of that bracelet, the quick adjust clasp, all that, all there, and very, very nice, and both quite desirable. I do like the change in color palette. I think this is a little bit more versatile, although orange is, you know, quite a high contrast color. I think that it generally flows better than here with the more mustard kind of old radium style, which I think looks great and goes with the kind of gilded handset. Overall, again, I feel like this is more versatile, and that size is pretty apparent there as well, if you want to see kind of the difference, right? So that's quite a difference. But for a better comparison of scale, if you are somebody who has the 40mm Swordfish, here it is. In comparison, again, now you're getting much similar scale here, as you can see from the size. Again, a little bit different in terms of the aesthetics of the dial and the handset, just being overall more refined, even down to the insert bezel on the unidirectional bezel there. And you can see also quite a different grip there. And then again, the female versus the male end link. And I'll say this male end link really didn't do a lot of harm to this, and it wasn't even a complaint, because honestly, this is a well-designed male end link because it does drop down from the case so nicely. But then you take a look, guys, let's do that again. Now 40 versus 40. Look at that. It's just so much more refined. Also, on this iteration, you did get a more basic kind of manual micro adjust clasp with the push button flip lock. Here, you're getting the more advanced quick adjust micro clasp. So, but you know, that's a good comparison for you guys just to get a look. But let's dive into this particular piece now, kind of as it stands on its own. So it has a 40 millimeter diameter. It's only 11.8 millimeters thick, and that's including the crystals. I say crystals because it actually has a display case back, which is really great. And you can see kind of one of the crowning jewels of this particular piece, which is going to be that LPJ or LJP. Which one is it, guys? Correct me in there. It's LJP G100 movement. So we'll get more into that, but I do like that it is a display case back, and you're not just seeing some very standard movement. You're seeing something quite special. And overall, again, there's a lot to appreciate in this timepiece. The lug to lug is 47 millimeters. Everything is brushed and polished with this nice hardened coating there. So it does have that 1200 hardness Vickers rating, which is great. The sapphire on top is flat. And the bezel has 120 click action. Ooh. And it's a good action. It's quite notchy, but still quite smooth. It's really well balanced, nicely dialed in, and does it line up perfectly? I think that might be slightly over. That's the tough thing about these bezels is, there you go. Okay, so that's about centered. So that looks centered to me. And yeah, very nice action. Of course, you are getting 120 clicks, unidirectional rotating, so only rotates one direction. It does have that forged carbon fiber insert, and it is fully loomed. The movement inside here, guys, is the Swiss Automatic Le Jeu Perret G100. The basic specs, guys, is that it's a 4 hertz sweep, so you're going to get 8 ticks per second, or that 28.8 beats per hour. It also has a 68-hour power reserve, so that's the nice thing. A lot of people really praise the Powermatic 80 movement because it has 80 hours power reserve, but they also achieve that by lowering the beat rate. So those ones are only going to be 6 ticks per second, so only 3 hertz sweep. So here you're getting an extended power reserve, not quite 80 hours, almost 70 hours, but you're still going to get that smoother sweeping seconds hand. Also, a nice thing is that this is a drop-in compatible match for the ETA 2824. So when it comes to, let's say, the dial, the hands, all that, a lot of the components are actually upgradable with and interchangeable with ETA. So let's say you have an ETA powered watch and ETA's stuff dries up, you could theoretically put in one of these movements. It should be fine. I believe you might need a new crown stem, but other than that, it's all pretty plug and play, which I found to be quite impressive. Now, in terms of this wonderful dial, some big standout changes, although it does have a very similar aesthetic and architecture. We do see that beautiful use again of the forged carbon fiber for the dial. It actually has applied indices versus the old sandwich cutouts. And then it does have a very nice date matched 6 o'clock. So it's going to have a dark disc with white font because this is a dark dial with white font on it. The lume is going to be C3X1 and BGW9. It's pretty much going to be that C3X1 throughout, and then BGW9 will only be on that seconds hand. They could be different layouts for other models within the range, so don't quote me on that to be, applying to everything. It does have 200 meters of water resistance. This bracelet continues to be a star. I mean, it's fantastic. Stainless steel. It does have a slight taper down to 18 millimeters. Again, also fully hardened. You're getting the solid female end links with the quick release toolless the toolless spring bars there for quick release. And then you're getting flat brushed, fully articulated 3-link with some really beautiful micro bevels. In terms of the light play on this is really fantastic, and I enjoy it. And then of course you're getting this great milled push button clasp, which has been refined and whatnot, so it's nice and soft, no sharp edges or anything like that. It has a beautiful bevel, as you can see, and then it has this really cool, look at that, micro adjust system. So you just pull the switch, click it in, and bam. So you're going to get 4 positions on that. It's very similar to the Christopher Ward clasp, for those of you who've been aware, and it acts, look at that, there's still a sticker on here. Just goes to show how new this watch is. But yeah, it's really fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. So with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, this wears really quite wonderful. Even if I get up close and there's a little bit of lens distortion there from the angles and whatnot, it still doesn't seem oversized. You can see it sits on the wrist really nicely. The contours are fantastic. Beautiful bevels and undercuts as well. And then that really very nice grip, finely machined on the bezel there, which is really nice, and it does tie in and suit the crown as well. Just the angles and the facets here, I love the shape. It's very original, while honestly just still looking really good and really clean. It's a really well balanced from that perspective. You can see I get a little bit more arm in there. This is something that is not a small watch, but definitely not oversized by any means. The way that the light just glides over the brushing here, you can see those micro bevels catch the light beautifully, and the flat links that are brushed are just really quite brilliant. And then you do have really a fantastic clasp with some great beveled edges. This thing is really, really sharp. And as you can see, the bezel itself actually doesn't overhang. The bezel is a little bit less than 40 millimeters. The measurement from that kind of 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock measurement is going to be pretty much exactly 40 millimeters when you're looking at the case, but the bezel itself is like 39 and some change. So this thing does wear a little bit smaller, but I think the angles and the proportions on the bracelet links really help it still have quite a bit of wrist presence. And yeah, I'm really, really liking that. So with that said, let's get it off the wrist, get into some low light transition, Lume shots, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, it does not disappoint. This is a dive watch, and it is a Zelos dive watch, so it absolutely does have lume that burns quite bright. One thing I really like to do during these lume shots is work in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you'll be coming in and out of a building, walking underneath overhangs. Oh, look at the light play on the textures of that forged carbon. Whew, where was I? All right, in and out of a building, underneath the shade of a tree, or maybe just spending time in your favorite automobile. You're going to be in less than optimal lighting conditions. So I like to reflect that here so you guys can get an idea of how this will render in more natural lighting situations, to include some harsh lighting, as you can see here, which typically would expose any type of defect within that finishing. Everything still glides quite uniformly. If anything, there might be a little bit of cloudiness over the brushing just from my fingerprints, but that's probably because this is a piece that has been worn. It does find wrist time, and it is just, look at the way that the dial captures, holds, reflects, and plays with light. It's really, it just gives it this kind of motion and 3D effect to it, I guess is probably the best way to say it. It just has a certain level of depth. And the cool thing is, even with all of those contours and twists and turns and plays of light going on, it's still quite legible everywhere in between. Look at that. It just pops. And of course, orange is a good color in terms of being underwater. It stays quite legible. So really beautiful from that standpoint, guys. Check out that Lume. Ooh, very, very nice. Let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right. Closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist. It really just wears perfectly, very well balanced and quite thin, with really great ergonomics, and that link articulation, wow, it continues to impress. In terms of model variants, definitely check for current availability in the description below. We'll have the links attached so you guys can see what's available depending on when you're watching this video. You might be watching it slightly before they're released, and they're all going to be available. You might be watching it slightly after the release, and a bunch will be sold out. Or you could be watching it years from now, and you're looking at the latest production run, which might differ slightly, because Zelos are really great about listening to their fans and their customers and making those incremental changes with each new release. So with that said, in terms of comparable models, you know, I'd say I'd compare this very favorable, you know, within that vein of any other micro brand diver under like 1,500 bucks. I was really kind of thinking 1,000 first, but honestly, 1,500. This is really that ambitious and that well done. So yeah, it says a lot. And no, it's not Swiss made, but it does have this really cool Swiss you know, movement, which is great. And then we all know the execution is fantastic, and really doesn't leave anything else to be desired from that perspective. The fit, the finish, the aesthetic, the design, all really well dialed in, and I think really well realized here with this model. So for me, guys, the bottom line, it's still a lot of watch for the money. It wears really, really well, and it's highly desirable within that strong Zelos following. And I think it also has a ton of crossover potential into into the mainstream micro brand market. So there might be those that are out there just looking for independent micro brands, and they see this and they're into divers and they go, oh man, that thing is really, really cool. I love kind of the contemporary, futuristic, modern. So many watches right now are just trying to recapture vintage aesthetics. I love that Zelos is actually working on creating new modern aesthetics, and they're refining them as they go, and it's much less of an homage and more like a contemporary. So very, very nice from that perspective. But do let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.